Guru Maharaj will give out the prizes for this year's amazing chess competition. The first of the prizes to be delivered is the bronze prize. The bronze prize goes to Sri Karnamrita Prabhu.
Haribo! Congratulations. Jai Balram. So who's this for? Also. Okay.
This is honey.
Honey. Jai Balram. You can make some baruni with that.
Yeah.
And also one soap? No.
This is like soap. Yeah.
Soap.
Soap. Yes.
Okay. Keep clean.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Krishna Karanam ki.
Haribo.
The silver prize goes to another person in the same family. Radhe.
Like father, like son. Right? Okay, same for you. There you go. Congratulations.
And the gold prize goes to Sri Srimad Doyal Nitai Prabhu ki.
Congratulations. Very good. So auspicious, we had the chess match, which is a favorite game of Balramji. And we had Hasya Yoga, which is Hasya Rasas, presided over by Balram, right? And we began last night speaking from Chaitanya Charitamrita in the section dealing with Ram, Nityananda Ram, right? To some extent, I think that we continued this evening as we proceed with our reading and discussion from the Madhya Lila. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Salakaya Chaksurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah Ajanulambita Bhujo Kanakavarato Sankirtanaika Pitaro Kamalaya Taksho Vishwambaro Dvijabaro Yugadharma Palo Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karunavataro Vande Shri Krishna Chaitanya Nityananda Sahodito Gaurarai Pushpavanto Chitro Sando Tamonodo Vandeham Shri Ramakrishna Abhaya Charano Sako Sukado Paramanando Sundaro Subala Priyo He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kancana Gourangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishwabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Sri Gauri Vaishnava Guru Parampara Ki Jai Shri Krishnadas Kaviraj Swami Mahashai Ki Jai Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Ki Jai Bhakti Vinod Parivar Ki Jai Gaur Bhaktabinda Ki Jai Gaur Premanande Hari Gaur. So we're reading about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's desire to depart after a short stay only in Jagannath Puri, and the dismay of his devotees And in particular, of course, he has now gathered new devotees, if you will, in Jagannath Puri Dham. But he came from Nadia to Puri with 4 devotees. There are different descriptions of who those devotees are in different texts. But Nityananda Prabhu was, of course, in all of those descriptions. And these devotees, in particular, who have accompanied him from Navadvip to Jagannath Puri, are dismayed, almost as if, again, he's taking sannyas, as we discussed last night. Nityananda Prabhu has tried to soften it all, if you will, and he's come up with a further suggestion. His first suggestion has been that you cannot go alone. Like I said last night, who do you know? Where will you stay? Of course, he's a sannyasi, and it's not something that enters into a sannyasi's mind. He should just go, and Bhagavan will provide, is the idea, the faith and the sensibility and so forth. But after all, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has just held everyone's hand and said, my life, you are my life and soul, I can't live without my friends. This is not typical of a sannyasi to speak like this, right? So Nityananda Prabhu first suggested that someone go with him, and Mahaprabhu says he wants to go alone. And in particular, who will go with him? But one of these 4, particularly Nityananda Prabhu, suggested himself. I know all the paths to all the holy places of South India. I went there in my previous incarnation. I went there prior also to come into Navadvip to meet with you. So I can accompany you. When Mahaprabhu complains, well, yes, but you did this, you did that. You're always getting in the way of my sannyas. So Nityananda Prabhu has a comeback after this here. I think we begin there. So he says first, Tabit Chari Jan Bohu Minati Korila Swatantra Ishwar Prabhu Kabula Manila. So Chari Jan, 4 people, 4 devotees, then insisted that they should all go with him. And Tabinityananda kohe, ye agyatomar dukha sukha, ye hok kartavya amar. Nityananda Mahaprabhu said, well, whatever you order, whatever you have ordered, then we will follow that, whether it brings us happiness or distress. Kintu, however, ek nivedan karon arbar bichar koriya taha kar angikar. Let me submit one suggestion to you. Please consider it. And if you think it's appropriate, then you please accept it. Kopin bahirvas ar jalpatra ar kichu nahi jobe sobe e matra. You, wherever you go, you have to take your loincloth with you, a set of clothes to change right into after bathing, and a water pot, kamandalu, and kopin, bahirvas, jalpatra, an extra set of clothes, your kopin, and a water pot. And you shouldn't really take anything more than this. তোমার দুই হস্তবালা বগান নামা গণনে জাল পাত্র বহির্বাস বহিবে kemone. So I would think we mentioned this earlier, but here is the verse. Since your two hands will always be engaged in chanting, then counting the names, how will you be able to carry your water pot and external garments? Prima veshe porte tumi hobe achetan. Eshab shamagri, tomar ke kore rakhan. When along the way you fall unconscious, as we've seen, in prem, who will protect you, your belongings, your water pots, your garments, and so forth. Krishnadas name e sarala brahmana, ho sange kori laha dhar nivedan. And here in our midst is the simple sarala brahmana, simple brahmana. His name is Krishnadas. Please accept him and take him with you. That is my request. So if you won't take one of us, who you're complaining about, getting in the way of your sannyas and so forth, all right, good enough. But still, this is the dilemma. How will you resolve this problem that I'm presenting? And before you can answer, I have a suggestion. Amongst us, there's a simple Brahmin, and if he goes with you, then at least someone will be there to assist you, right? And that will give us some peace of mind. He says, Jal patra vastrubaki tomar sange jobe, je tomar ichokar kichu na bolibe. He will carry your water pot and garments, and then you may do whatever you like, and he will not say a word. So he won't be like us, a little pushy, although Mahaprabhu likes that very much. If the disciple can be a little pushy, that's very nice. But all with affection and all, but if you say otherwise, Guru Maharaj, then that is another thing, right? So these are very close, intimate devotees of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, have that kind of rapport with him, right? And it's very charming. I saw that to some extent in Pujapachita Maharaj's Mat. Some of his disciples would deal with him. It was very different than we would deal with Prabhupada, who was a little difficult to get closer to. Because they had so much Aishwarya, such a big group, and so on and so forth. In the early days, when the movement was smaller, there was more possibility for that. Some of the earlier devotees can tell stories along those lines, but I saw it more readily in Chita Maharaj's mouth. It was very, very charming. So he says, Tobe tanru vakya prabhu kori angika. So Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted the request. So this, he's going to go on further and change the subject, but this kind of unknown devotee brought forward by Nityananda Prabhu like this is we owe a great debt to him. Of course, he later on we'll find in traveling in the south that he caused some disturbance to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu because he became distracted, right, by some other sect, maybe some gypsies or something like that, and he became a disturbance to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this is part of the territory. This can happen, right? We saw even amongst the students, sometimes they can cause disturbance. There's no mission I've ever seen, been in, associated with, where that has not been part of the territory. So, but that's another story. However, we're best for us today to focus on our indebtedness to the Brahmin Krishnadas, because were it not for him, how would we know anything about the details of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's tour of South India, right? So he accompanied him everywhere. He came back with Nityananda Prabhu, with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. When he came back, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, talking to Nityananda Prabhu, and this fellow, I reject him. I reject him. He had to rescue him, bring him back, and was a disturbance to him and so forth. So Mahaprabhu showed his very, very strict nature. There was a well-known disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, whom he, I don't know the details, but he conducted himself in such a way that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur had to dismiss him. And then, he went on his further with his campaign from that particular mat. And that devotee then was remorseful for what he had done. He came back and he pleaded his case to the devotees, and so it was brought up to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur that so and so has come back and he's remorseful, and we would like you to accept him again, and so forth. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur said, I cannot do that because of the position I am holding. He has done this, and I have made such a decision. So that's in the position of the Acharya, he said, representing the dignity of the position. And again, I don't know all the details, but I have to maintain this position. But he said, if you want to let him back, then I cannot disagree. So of course, he had been remorseful and so forth, and so on. So on the strength of the devotees' desire, the devotee was accepted again. So this is a similar situation, because while Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and this is somewhat, well, he rejected him. Came back, he said, no, I don't want to have his company. It's not up to the standards. He did this, whatever. And so Nityananda Prabhu, who had suggested him, put forward this Brahman and so forth. What did he do? So this is the merciful nature of Nityananda Prabhu, right? It said that whoever Chaitanya Mahaprabhu what is it saying? Whoever Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, whoever accepted it, what? Anybody who asked, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would give. And Nityananda Prabhu, the people that didn't ask and said they don't want it, he gave it to them. This is the difference between the two. One, Nityananda Prabhu, the other self of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took, I was mentioning this the other day, he had taken sannyas as a device, as a vehicle to further disseminate his teachings and bless the world. Because a sannyasi would be given recognition, just the presence of a sannyasi would create a teachable moment. He would be distinguished from everyone in white cloth, for example, from the women and from the men in white cloth, wearing saffron, a shaved head, and so forth. So it's like if you see a policeman, I can get a clock. Well, not these days, but you're supposed to be able to think, he can help us out here, right? Something like that. So the uniform, right? creates a teachable moment. And so in order to propagate his movement, he came up with this idea in Navadvip, even though it was at the cost of the feelings of his intimate devotees, because it would create some distance between himself and them. He would sit higher than them. He would the etiquette of a sannyas that would have to be observed to some extent, and so forth. But in doing that, then he was in a better position, particularly to speak to learned people, Brahmanas, distinguished members of the subcontinent of India and the religious world, and so forth. Your Sarvabhauma Bhattacharjas, your Prakashananda Saraswati, and so forth. All these luminaries. This was the one side of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's campaign: speak to educated people, and in the context of doing that, we find so much valuable siksha, so much valuable philosophy and theology underlying the simple practice of Nam Sankirtan, which was the method to the madness of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's love of God, right? To distinguish then through philosophy and theology the emotional reaction, the result of hearing and chanting, from ordinary material emotions. Just like in Benares, when Prakashananda Saraswati was present with his thousands of sannyasin disciples, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came to the town, and he was singing and dancing, and he was attractive, but seems a little emotional for a sannyasi to be singing and dancing in public and so forth. So, and then of course Chaitanya Mahaprabhu created a teachable moment with in that context by humbly coming to the assembly as he was invited, and sitting at the door and washing the feet of the other sannyasis as they came into the assembly. And in the context of doing that, the very Brahman effulgence that they were preoccupied with began to emanate from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He showed them Nirvishesh Brahman. He showed them, what does Bhagavad Gita say? The end of one of those chapters, I don't remember. That Brahman, that is, I am the support of that Brahman effulgence. Brahmano hi pratishtaham. Brahmano hi pratishta aham. I am the pratishta, the support of that which is the support of everything. It is beautifully described in Gaudiya Vaishnavism as the halo of Bhagavan, his aura, Nirvishesh Brahman. Brahmeti Paramatmeti Bhagavaniti Shabdate. Right? This is, again, we heard this idea in the morning. This is a beautified, if you will, ornamented form, our Gaudiya metaphysic of non-dualism, Advaigyan Tattva. Radharani characterizes it, Srimati Radharani, in this way: those who say, I love you, they don't know anything about love. Why? Because in love there is no other. This is the abhed side of the equation. In love there is no other. I often say, in love, you and I become we. That's a unit now. It's a dynamic. So this is a dynamic form of non-dualism, about which, again, there's much to say. Whereas about Nirvishesh Brahman, well, there's no qualities there. Nothing. There's no form. There's no movement. Nothing to be said. What is the movement then? Of Bhagwan. When, as I say often, Nirvishesh Brahman is omnipresent, omniscient. It's everywhere. Brahman is everywhere, knows everything. You're everywhere, you can't move. If you know everything, there's nothing to know. But Krishna is Brahman, moving and even dancing and wondering, asking his friend, does she love me or does she love me not? And this movement this current. If you take, it's something like this. If you go into the forest and you come across a beautiful pond, and it's very still, and it's very peaceful, you can sit, and your mind can become like the pond, right? That would be nice, right? Because it's moving all the time, and then you're chasing after its suggestions, which take you this way, and then they take you this way, and then and even in the course of taking you the way that it suggested you go, it just distracts you along the way, and so forth, right? So to still the mind, this is a huge accomplishment. It's the central focus of all forms of yoga, and stilling the mind unto itself is the culmination of your classical, Astanga yoga or the Gyan Marg and so forth. But in Bhakti Marg, we have a different idea, right? It includes that idea. What is the idea? If you go to that pond in the forest and sit, your mind becomes peaceful. The difference between that peaceful, placid body of water that gives peace of mind and the mind that's disturbed by so many thoughts is something like if somebody was to come along and throw stones in the pond, right? Then there would be currents going in different ways, and it wouldn't lend itself in the same way to facilitate, let us say, the stilling of our own mind, right? So the peace is gone. People want peace. It means they want peace of the mind. That's what they want, right? But if you go to the lake, sit, the mind is peaceful, and then you throw a stone in the lake, then there will be ripples. But because the stone is in one place in the center, the ripples will be concentric, and they will serve to beautify the lake. There won't be disturbance. You can throw 1,000 stones in the same place, and then it's like the difference between peace and love. Peace and love. We want both, right? So we aren't interested only in what is the saying of the sutras, yoga sutras? Chitta vritti nirodha. Chitta vritti. The mind is so many vrittis, so many impressions. These impressions that are like similar impressions form what we call a samskar. And when a samskar is mature, we call it a vasana. It is now manifest as like a disposition, and we're moving according to it. And to the extent that we're under that influence, our own freedom of choice, our own will, the agency that is inherent within our Atma is covered over. Jiva Goswami explains in his Sandarbhas that the jiva that is conditioned by the influence of the Maya Shakti, it is a doer only in a very remote sense, because its inherent characteristic or one of its qualities have agency, right? To be a doer. If you're not a doer, if you have no agency, then you cannot be responsible for anything that's done. Am I right? There may be a question. Does the jiva have agency? Well, in modern contemporary philosophy, the dominant perspective is a materialistic perspective. So we are led to believe that the forces of the world are all physical, and the will that is an illusion, right? And they like to debate this idea. It seems meaningless to enter into a debate with someone who has that understanding, because according to that understanding, the debate's already figured out. It's already, whatever's going to happen is going to happen, and it has nothing to do with whatever I put into it. I've got nothing to put into it. These are just material forces, physical forces interacting, a very unsatisfying perspective from the natural and human sensibilities, right? We may make a lot of good points that way, but it doesn't resonate very well. And fortunately, there are good philosophical points and arguments for the mind and the intellect that needs them to support the idea. Oh, you're more than just physical force. You are. There is a mind. There is a self beyond that, and so forth. So they can't find the agency, but our point, one of our points, Jiva Goswami's point is that the agency of the jiva, which is inherent in the jiva, in material life is pushed to the background by the forces of material nature, the gunas. And so the jiva is witnessing. It exists, it's witnessing. But witnessing is a kind of doing also. In fact, some things only happen because somebody's watching. So the jiva said in Gita, what apareyamitaschanyam prakritim vidime param jiva bhuta mahabaho yaedam darete jagat. The jiva is making the world go round by its very presence. It's kind of like, I've given the example before, if you sit down before the television and turn it on, then it may take over your life, right? And you can't get up, in the worst case scenario. But it needed to be turned on, right, to have that power. If you turn it on and let it get the best of you, then unless somebody comes and pulls you out of the chair and says, turn that thing off, right, you'll be stuck there. And living in a virtual world, you're projected emotionally into the drama or whatever, is on the screen, right? The fact that you're sitting there and you're fine, there's no problem, but it's like you're dying, or you might die, and whatever it may be the case that you're emotionally identified with on the screen. So similarly, the jiva turns on the world, right? Consciousness turns on matter. Matters because of the atma, because of the self. Otherwise, if it mattered independently of the self, who would know about it? Who would care, right? The self. Yeah. But that self is in the background. Its capacity to act as a doer is not fully manifest. It's only partially manifest. Therefore, prakritim vidime param, what is it? Prakritim vidime param. No, that's the other verse. I'm thinking, what does he say? He says, the jiva thinks it's doing things that are actually being done. Prakriti kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvasa ahankara vimudatma kartahamiti manyate. He says, oh, you are very people are very vimudatma, very foolish, less intelligent, to think that they are the doer, when actually things are just being done by physical forces. It sounds like a good modern materialistic perspective. Of course, the next verse follows up on that and explains, but those who are not under the influence of material nature, they know otherwise what's done by material nature and the influence that the jiva has, right? But again, in a simple way, if we have no will, then we cannot be responsible for anything that's done. So if we give a philosophy like this, what will be the practical implications in the world where we have to have moral order and so on and so forth, right? If the prominent, dominant world philosophy was, and it is really, that you have no agency, then the culpability that you have for any particular wrong, which is just a made-up idea arising out of human sensibilities, this serves to weaken the resolve, really, or the justification for having moral order in the world. Without moral order, what is the difference between human life and the less complex forms of life? Do you follow? I mean, in religious conviction and ideal, nothing gives more impetus for a moral, socially just, perspective. So you could argue, even if it's not true, it's good to have. And the less, and arguably the more that a materialistic worldview becomes prominent, it filters down. People aren't philosophical; they don't think about these things, but it filters down into the way people act, conduct themselves, and then you have people doing, very crazy things. In my country, people are just going and shooting people like every, I think it's every couple hours. Only some of them are reported, right? So dangerous, very dangerous. And of course, if we don't have any will, then what is the meaning of all these scriptures that say you should do this, you shouldn't do that, right? So how do we get into such heady topics here from such a sweet text as the Chaitanya Charitamrita? I have to trace my thoughts back. I don't know if I'll be able to. I'm a little tired tonight, but who can say where we segued into that?
Peace of mind on the lake.
Yes, right. So peace of mind, right? So our idea is not just peace, but love, right? Yoga Sutra said that to chitta vritti nirodha, that to do away with all these vrittis, cleanse the chitta of all the vrittis that are making our world go round, right? Then you're being chased by them. These impressions that come and form into samskars and then vasanas, and this is doing everything. And you are lost to yourself, the beauty that you are, the more that you are. We feel, as human beings, that there is more to life than what meets the eye and the mind. I often say that we are constantly, as humans, celebrating those moments where we transcend, in a sense, relatively speaking, that which was thought to be the limits previously, whether it be in the realm of athletics or in the realm of medicine, in science, in exploration. We went to the moon. It's a staggering thought to stand out and look at the moon and think, how'd that happen? How do you go there, right? So these are to find the Americas from Europe. Now we call it the old country. That's good too. It has some heritage, and so these pioneering activities. This I say often. I've said before. Some of you haven't heard, but I'll repeat it. We have birds that fly high in the sky. We have fish that swim deep in the ocean. But those birds that fly high in the sky never think, maybe I'll try swimming to the bottom of the ocean. And those fish at the bottom of the ocean think, oh, those birds are flying in the sky. I should try that. But we humans think, birds are flying on high in the sky. We should be able to fly also. Fish are swimming at the bottom of the ocean. We should be able to go to the bottom of the ocean. So we get a spacesuit or or whatever, and a lung, to go down, and a suit and so forth. We feel that we should be able to live a life that is not constrained by the apparent limitations within time and space, and that includes ultimately, we shouldn't die. This is fairly universal in human society, even amongst the materialists. What is the goal of artificial intelligence? And if you look at these things carefully, they're trying not to die. Nobody wants. They want to take the consciousness, and because they have thought consciousness must be like a program. It's like the software, and the body's like the hardware, right? It's absolutely nothing like software. That's another whole interesting argument. But and programs have to be written, right? They don't just happen. So anyway, they think like this. Perhaps the consciousness is like a program, and the body is or she like the software, and the body's like the hardware. So we should be able to upload it, right? Onto, let's create a body that's not, subject to the same problems. We can put we can put a metal leg on somebody, right? Or an artificial lung. So we can gradually make these parts, and we can upload the consciousness and so forth. So I don't want to die. There's a sense we should live forever. We should be able to transcend, move beyond the apparent constraints, and we celebrate the moments that we do that without realizing that that's what we're doing. And this is exactly what Vedanta says. Yeah, we do exist beyond the constraints of time and space. But the way to realize that is to look within rather than without. And just think about it. How deep is the within compared to the without that we seek to explore, when it is within that the explorer resides? Who is more complex, that which is explored or the explorer? The explorer is vastly more complex than that which it can explore, conquer, understand, comprehend, bring within its grasp, and so forth, right? These are the questions of life. What's out there, and who's asking the question? These are the questions. These are age-old, and they continue on forever. And we have an answer. There are other answers, but ours is very appealing to me, and all of us assembled here for good reason. It's well reasoned. Now, you cannot reason it out in such a way that you can how you say, objectively fill the gap, right? In science, you have to fill the gap and demonstrate it. This is such and such is a fact. But the very thing we're talking about, it transcends life, transcends reason. By reason, you should not be able to give things away and have more. How can you give something away and have more? What do you do? When you give something away, you gain, right? What is that you gain? So this is Eastern philosophy. Less is more. Does that have, what do you think? Is less more, or is more more? My country is driven by, the Western world is driven by, the more you get, the more you are. And those thoughts that contradict that, they come from the religious traditions. Jesus said something like, of Nazareth, like drop everything and follow me. It's not exactly what they did, but some did. And because some did, those who gave themselves during those times against all opposition, right? The Roman Empire, for example, they were living underground. They went underground for this ideal. Isn't it the catacombs, I think they were called, right? And Christians were living underground and hiding from but never giving up. Just that little sadhu sangha with Jesus. They got some bhava bhas, some shadow of bhava. No argument could turn them away from that. They risked their lives. They were thrown to the lions, right? And these kind of sacrifices, this looms very large in human society. It'll never go away. The students of the Buddha, of the Rumi and so forth. These people, they may be few, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and so forth, so many sadhus, but they may be few. But how many you need? Right. You need one example that leads you to believe it's actually fact. You could transcend the limits of time and space. What is some objective criterion that we could bring to bear to make our case? That is this, that amongst the different traditions, mystical traditions, right, and their mystical traditions or sides to every major tradition. Amongst the Islamic fanatics, you have the Sufis. Amongst the Christian fundamentalists, you have your Mertons and Teresas and so forth, right? Your Saint John of the Cross or Saint Francis's and so forth, right? Within Vaishnavism also, there are plenty of, or Hinduism, there are plenty of Hindu fundamentalists, right? But of course, within Hinduism, there's a difference. Within Christianity, within Islam, really Jesus was a member of the Jewish community, as I understand it. But he was a mystic, and he was dismissed by the Jewish community. And the Sufis are dismissed in the Islamic religious community. They're dismissed. They're mystics. They're actually following the tradition and deriving from it all that it really speaks about in depth. But it's almost unrecognizable by the members who have a fundamentalist, use Bhaktivinoda Thakur's terms, a Bharabahi perspective rather than a Saragrahi, an essential understanding. I used to give lectures in ISKCON in Chicago many years ago, and there was a lady and her husband who moved in across the street into a Presbyterian church, and he was the minister, and she was his wife. And they would see the devotees walking here and there, and she was very interested. So she used to come to the temple and hear my lectures. And she was so inspired by my lecture. She'd go back and tell her husband, hey, Swami said this, Swami said that, Swami said this, Swami said that. And then he began to factor that into his lectures in the parish, which was mostly elderly people. And there was a revolt. The church revolted, and they went to his higher up, the cardinal or whatever it was, the bishop, and they complained because he was preaching these, factoring in this give up everything, That's not what they came to church to hear, right? Came to church to hear how they could get a new, a grandson, and increase, and gain more, right? And therefore fill the gap that they felt in their life. And so the bishop weighed in, and they relocated him in the Bahamas, in the Caribbean. It's like down where Agni Dev comes from. Like, well, let's put him out there. The natives down there, they don't know any better. They don't have anything anyway. So go talk to them about renunciation. But you can only keep with you when you die that which you gave. The extent to which you gave, that's what you can take with you. You can't take anything else. That you will take with you. That's the more. It's moving away. Less is more perspective allows the self to come out. What is more important? What's out there, or who's asking the question? Who's asking the question is much more important, much more deep. So our suggestion, a simple suggestion, if you want to transcend the limits of time and space, the whole world's moving like this, there should not be death. We ignore it as much as we can. Buy a beautiful plot, put it over somewhere, some flowers and some graves, and drive by. And meanwhile, the world is just going on, right? for a moment, Prabhupada used to call it what? What is the word for creation?
Cemetery.
Yeah, he got Smashana Vairagya. So we only start to renounce and get and become profound. What is the meaning of life? What, my goodness! And when someone dies, for a few moments, and maybe lasts another day or two, then the world just comes back on, right? It just comes back on. The illusion that everything's going to go on, and we think someone has been lost. It's a pity. But those in the know know nothing has been lost, right? A self who is awake. So what the self within, the explorer, is more profound, deep than that which is explored. I mean, just take this one subject. What is consciousness? Good luck answering that in the world. Nowadays, every week there's a new theory that tries to demonstrate convincingly that consciousness is physical or an emergent property, of the brain, and it's really well written and whatnot. But it only convinces the fellow and a couple of people who went along with it and helped him with the theory. Everybody else in the field of philosophy of mind and whatnot, he didn't get it either. And another theory and another theory. It's such a complex subject. It's bewildered human society since forever. What is consciousness? You want to talk about it as if it's a thing, and it's not a thing. What's not a thing? There are more important things in life than things, we can say, than the non-things. Consciousness. You want to measure it, but it is the measurer. It's like the ruler trying to measure itself, right? So our suggestion is a simple suggestion that we say, look, the human society is all moving in this way as if that there's more to life than it appears, that the limitations that we experience can be transcended, including death. Why try to upload your consciousness in some mistaken idea that such would be possible? Why not, instead of looking outside, look within? And this is my point, what is more deep? What serves as more to explore? The inner world of the explorer, or the world of that which is explored? Well, the former is far deeper. And that's what Gaudiya Vaishnavism comes to, right? Because it says, not only is the explorer, if you will, different from that which is explored, more profound, or let's put it another way, not only is the explored but a manifestation of the explorer. If we take Bhagavan as the ultimate explorer, then material nature is one of his Shaktis. We're non-dualists also, but our non-dualism is beautiful. There's a saying, Sarvo kalam idam brahma. Everything is Brahman. So the monists, these type of transcendentalists, everything is Brahman. There's only one thing, Brahman. One. We are all that. There are no individual selves. This is a popular idea. Pujapad Sridhar said, yes, Sarva kalam idam brahma. Everything is Brahman. All the things within Brahman are also Brahman, he said. He's saying there's all kinds of variety within Brahman. It's all Brahman. You understand? So this is again the beautifying of non-dualism. This is not simply only the simplistic idea that consciousness is the driving force of matter. Matter is an extension of consciousness. This is a very, to talk about it in a kind of a quantum perspective. Out there is a quantum field, and it's just full of potentialities, and the will of the observer determines what will it be. What is that experiment, the split experiment? Will it be a light, or will it be what's the other thing? A photon or a wave? Let's just put it simply, right? So you see, if you look deep, what happens? You look really closely at what's out there. You go really down, looking for the building blocks of the whole thing, and what do you find? You find consciousness there. You find an observer. Oh God, the observer is at the base. The observer. So in Gaudiya Vedanta, we have a very beautiful idea. It's a little bit theologically complex, but that's all right. What am I saying? Not only are we teaching Chitta Vritti Nirodha, sit by the pond and let your mind become peaceful, but throw stones in the pond, all in the same place. Now the mind becomes Shuddha Shatva Visheshatma Prema Suryamsu Samyabhak. What does he say next? Ruchibis Chitta. The mind now is peaceful because Mahaprabhu has taught us Cheto Darpana Marjanam, clean the chitta of all these vrittis. What is his method for cleaning? Take help from Krishna himself. Bring the Nam into the chitta, into your heart. He enters as a humble sweeper. Inside the heart, as I've said before, there are so many multinational corporations with big lights. Buy me, follow me, do this, all these. And Krishna Nam comes in like a sweeper. We'll pay attention to a sweeper when all these big offers are coming. He's selling brooms. Brooms for sale. Brooms for sale. Okay, I'll take one, but could use a broom, maybe. But he's saying, magical broom, they're magical brooms for sale, right? And you just do a little sweeping, and that just the Atma starts. Just the light of the Atma. Just the light of the Atma will make all the neon signs of the multinational corporations go dark. It holds it cannot compare. It'll turn the whole world into darkness. All the offers, right? With a much better offer. What are you? What is your prospect? What is the nature of the explorer? Not only is it bright and full of light, luminous, but it has ananda. And if that ananda comes out, this means it has that we are by nature constituted of love, right? Love arises out of, if you love someone, Prabhupada said, then you will want to serve them, right? You will say, would you like to go to lunch? Come, can I cook for you? Something, right? These are expressions of love. So in Gaudiya Vedanta, then we want to throw stones in that pond and the ripples come. This is beautifying now. There's movement now in the mind, right? The Shuddha Sattva has come and has taken over the Antakaran. It's taken over the Antakaran. It's running now with so many thoughts how to please Krishna. This one, that one, right? This is a little bit of Gaudiya Vedanta, and how do we get to Gaudiya Vedanta discussion? We went to the pond. How did we get to the pond? Peace and love. Peace and love. Mahaprabhu didn't want any disturbance. Yeah, that's true. Yes, Nityananda showed mercy to Krishnadas, right? So anyway, so Krishnadas came back, was disenfranchised by Mahaprabhu, and Nityananda Prabhu collected him up and gave him a service. This is the beauty of Nityananda Prabhu, right? The other self, the extension of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu preaching to the educated people, Nityananda Prabhu to the downtrodden people. They're covering both sides, right? If someone wanted Krishna Prem, Mahaprabhu would give it. If someone didn't want it, Nityananda Prabhu would give it to that person, right? This was his nature, right? Mahaprabhu rejected him, and he sent him to Navadvip. You see, when he came to Navadvip, he became a hero. He's bringing news, like Sachi said, news will come. So this was the first news coming back. Because those who had come with Mahaprabhu said, here, you stay here in Nilachal, I will go to Setubandhu, South India, and I will, and you'll see me when I return. That's 2 years. After 2 years, no news about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for those who remained in Navadvip. And Krishnadas is bringing the news. Suddenly he comes into the scene in Navadvip, and he's a hero, a saint. Oh, you bring the news. Come, sit, tell us, right? See how Nityananda Prabhu's grace works, and Krishnadas was reinstated, and we are indebted to him, right? Let us focus on that side. This is Nityananda Prabhu's suggestion, right? He sent an unqualified person in some ways, and he got a little distracted, and he disturbed Mahaprabhu, but still, some wonderful things have come from that. I don't think I closed the loop entirely there, but it's been an interesting discussion, right? It's been an interesting discussion. Are there any questions? Yes.
I would ask about Vishwarup, Shankarananda. He's a partial avatar of Balaram.
Of?
Balaram.
Yes.
But in what way? Because he seems to behave in a very different way. He is kind of the idol and the big brother of Nimai in his very young age. But then, contrary to Balaram, he doesn't stay there protecting, but he goes away. And
yes.
He kind of creates a kind of like a prototype of leading the home, in a sense.
Yes. Yes. I think that, of course, not much is said about him, right? Hence your question. But I think that there is a parallel to the Krishna Lila, in as much as the expansion of Balaram first appeared in the womb of Devaki. It's actually expansion of Balaram, preparing her womb for the appearance of Krishna. So, and then when the time came, that expansion of Balaram merged into Balaram, Rohini Nandan, who was born from Rohini in Braj. So, if I recall correctly, then Sachi had a number of daughters, I believe, that were died at birth, and so the idea is something like this: that the elder brother, expansion of Nityananda Prabhu, came and created a situation, a scene that would be such that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu could take birth there. That was his main task. And then, yes, we don't hear any Leelas in connection with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's elder brother, other than he took sannyas from Advaita, to which Mother Sachi was kind of took an objection, and because once Shankararanya or Vishwarup left home, then her fear was that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu would do the same thing, of course, which he did. So he did follow his brother's example, who set an example for the religious world. So there's two sides to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Leela, as we've explained, and his whole tour of South India is the one side, reaching out. He's leaving his associates is one side. The fact that his heart is with them is the other side, the internal side. So, without any further commentaries from others, I will not say more about Vishwarup, Shankaranya Tijai. What else? Yes.
Some teacher says that the personality of Jiva is created either by material energy or by spiritual energy, including the sense of I. So if we don't agree with such view, what is inherent in Jiva and what is created by both of these energies?
If we don't believe,
Yeah, if we don't agree with this view,
which view?
that personality of Jiva is created either by material energy or by spiritual energy, and including the sense of I.
If we don't believe that the I is created by,
Yeah, the personality of Jiva.
Then if we don't, then
Jiva is simply like source of consciousness.
Yeah.
We don't agree with such view.
Yeah.
So, what is created by material or spiritual energy, and what is inherent in Jiva?
Well, there's a false sense of self that arises, right, out of contact with material nature. When the jiva is invested in material nature, then its attachments kind of form a sense of self. So my sense of my gives rise to a sense of I. Materially speaking, in an ordinary sense, I am my desires, my attachments. All right, so this is a false I. Now the question is there a real I, right? And all Vaishnavas say, yes, there is. So what is that I then? That's kind of your question. What is that I? And if we look at Chaitanya Charitamrita. Chaitanya Charitamrita we consider to be an accurate representation of the teachings of the Goswamis, right? Who are the original founding acharyas, Shastra gurus who've given the Bhakti Shastras to us and so forth, right? But it's explained in more simple language in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So one of the core statements of Chaitanya Charitamrita is Jivera Swarup Hoy Nitya Krishna Das. So the jiva, you're asking what is the jiva? What is the I of the jiva? You're saying that the I of the jiva is that the jiva is inherently a servant of Hari. This is its dharma, to use Bhaktivinoda Thakur's term, the Jaiva Dharma. It is inherently purposeful, and its purpose, it exists only for the purpose of serving Bhagavan. And you can trace this out in other sampradayas, and this is the same point is made. And in making this point, if you study the Chaitanya Charitamrita, you will see that I say it's a very core point. It can't be turned around to be minimized, and for example say, well, that just means that the jiva is subordinate Shakti to Bhagavan. It doesn't mean that it's inherently, has a nature of a servant. That's just a commentary on the verse that is rather not. It's hard to draw it inherently from what the verse is saying, and there's further support throughout Chaitanya Charitamrita. So, let's talk about from another angle of view, the original kind of statement about a swarup, an identity, a nature of serving Bhagavan eternally, which is our ideal, right? To eternally live in the spiritual world, if you will. as servant of Bhagavan. This is our ideal. This idea is first found in the Chandogya Upanishad, the earliest that we can trace out the idea. There it's described that mukti, the mukta, upon attaining mukti, the jiva, the mukta, then moves about, laughs and plays and so forth. Well, this isn't talking about entering into Brahman, right? There's no moving, there's no laughing, there's no moving about. This is a full sense of liberation. And so in order to move about and play and laugh and so forth, well, you have a certain nature. You're talking about a person, right? Right? So then the question in the sutras on which Baladev Vidyabhushan comments in his Govinda Bhashya, this is the Gaudiya Vedanta, it's a pretty good source, core text. He raises the question that if the text says that the jiva moves about, has a form, it's basically saying the jiva has, the mukta has form. What is the question in the sutra is this something that is inherent, or is it something that's attained? And the argument, the Purva Paksha, the contradictory argument, the argument that he opposes, he says, is, well, if it was inherent, then it couldn't be that which is attained. Therefore, the form that's being talked about must be something like a celestial form or something like that that's attained. But Baladev comments, as do all of the acharyas of all the schools of Vaishnavism that have commentaries, and they all do on this same point, that no, it's attained, which is found in the words of the Chandogya Upanishad. If it's attained, even though it's inherent, because it's unmanifest. So it's inherent, the form of the jiva, but it becomes manifest by ingress of further bhakti, impressions of bhakti. So this is a pretty clear scriptural evidence for the idea, which is a very strong and central theme of Bhaktivinoda Thakur's teaching, for example, and a teaching that until in the 21st century nobody objected to. Now, the scriptures are full of descriptions of the need for sadhu sangha, blessings, getting impressions of bhakti, and so on and so forth. And so where is the emphasis that that's already inherent? It's almost like without being said. Otherwise, if the personality is not you, then you're creating a personality that you're identifying with. You're a unit of consciousness that's identifying with a personality that's been created by another Shakti, the Sarup Shakti, and it's not you, but you're identifying with it. It's a little odd. It's very un-Upanishadic and disconcerting if you think about it. Now, in this is a very thorny kind of a topic, right? So when you're talking about this, you're going to find, well, what about this? Or what about, it's going to come up either way on either side. So this is the way it comes up on the other side that is worth bringing up. This is problematic. This always bothered me about this idea. It's not inherent. It's only because those who propagated this strongly made a point that jiva has no ananda, the jiva has no gyan. It's just sat, consciousness. It has the potential to experience some ananda, but it's not inherent. I mean, it's a little hard to we say the bliss of Brahman, if multiplied 1 trillion-fold, couldn't compare to a tiny atomic particle of the bliss of prema. I mean, we're measuring immeasurables here, for making a point, right? In the Upanishad, it said the bliss of this is 10 times, and if you get a wife, it's 100 times, and if you get a child, it's 1,000 times, and if you go to, this loka, it's 1,000,000 times. If you go to that loka, it's 10 million times. You go to Brahmaloka, it's 10 billion times, and you go to Brahman, it's unlimited. And still we're measuring with unlimited, because of the limits of language and the constraints in which of our conditioning in which we live in, the limits of thought and so forth. We have to talk about it like that. Or to give an example, there's the pond. It's still, you put a stone in and the ripples move. The ripples are better, right? we try to make a point. Loving is better than knowing. The end of knowing is loving. If the problem is ignorance, knowledge is the solution. Boss. But what is the value of knowledge? Only as much as it informs our actions by which we can become happy, blissful, joyful, and by which we can love. Right? So this is this is Gaudiya Vedanta arguing with another school of Vedanta. It's all on another level. And so when we get into topics like this, and even within Gaudiya Vaishnavism, this is an argument, as you know, then you can say, I could come up with arguments that I probably wouldn't have the answers for. If you say it's inherent, this is a problem. Yeah, well, okay, whatever. If you say it's not inherent, we come up with other questions that you could raise, and the other person could say, well, yeah, I can't quite answer that. So we try to look at the totality of it, right? And why not look at the totality of it, totality of Gaudiya Vedanta, by also looking in relation to other schools of Vedanta? What do they say? I mean, the idea that you're questioning about, that the jiva is not inherently a servant of Bhagavan by his very nature, is not something that's. What happened?
There's a bug here.
Anyway, this is not supported by other schools of Vedanta. And if Jiva Goswami, for example, wanted to make a point that was so divergent from other schools of Vedanta, he would have to make it really clear and really make a strong, concerted, consistent argument. But that's not what we find, in my opinion. This other opinion is kind of tweaked out of this section, and you could look at it like that, but and then you have to say, well, Baladev came later. Yeah, in his own time, Baladev was thought to be a second Jiva Goswami. I think it's better to understand. You can make an argument, well, let's look just what the Goswami said. Everything has to correspond with what they said. Yeah, that's true to an extent, but let's not take the life out of an ongoing tradition that brings more light. Let's look at Jiva Goswami through the lens of Baladev Vijayabhushan, who's a later Acharya on this point, or through Bhakti Vinod, for that matter. Why not? Does that help? Yeah. I mean, it's a big topic, but what else? Yes.
I initially had another question, but now I have actually a follow-up question to what you just said. You spoke about Jiva's Jaiva Dharma and serving Krishna eternally, and that always sounds like a very abstract idea to me when we see in the material world. And I was wondering in which way we could start walking in that direction in this year, and now it's like through serving the Vaishnavas, or are there also other factors?
How can we start to actualize that? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's what we're doing. We're doing. There's two sides to developing a eternal relationship with Krishna, for that manifesting. One side, which is one that we, for good reason, emphasize, is deconstructing the other personality, right? The material personality. Like I said the other day, well, is Krishna real? A real person? Well, are you? Let's look at that. Are you a real person? What does it mean to be a real person? What does it mean to be real? your mind is changing, your body is changing, you will die, you disappear. It's thousands of years ago. Krishna's been around for thousands of years, at least in the minds of humans. You or I won't be. So maybe he's more real than we are. So deconstructing the material, personality, cleansing the heart, Mahaprabhu's Cetodarpana Marjan. This is the beginning. This is the end of some schools, right? Of Vedanta. This is the Advaita Vedanta. This is the beginning of ours. Cleanse. So that's one side. And then proportionately, as the heart is cleansed and our understanding is fortified, our faith is fortified by understanding and so forth, and our practice then develops, is driven by greater resolve. The more you understand, the more resolve through your practice, conviction, and so forth, to grow the faith, if you will. Then experience from the other side comes. Have you read my commentary on Chikshastakam?
I need to read it again.
Yeah,
I read
me
it
too.
years ago and I didn't understand.
Now is good answer. So now you read it again, because it talks about these different stages. So at a certain point, then that which is coming from the other side that causes the cleansing to happen, it starts to show up because the room is getting clear. It starts to show up. And we can identify it, and we can consult with our Guru Dev. I feel like this. And then we see, what does that mean to you? Is that grounded in tattva, actually? Or is it just your imagination? If it's grounded in tattva, then Guru will give encouragement and say, you should look at this, study this, read this, chant these names, this way. So that's what we're doing. And in the beginning stages, it may seem like, well, that's a very abstract idea. To be an eternal servant of Krishna. Meanwhile, I have to take care of my daughter. I have to go to work. I have to pay the bills, and all these things. Understand that. It's difficult. I mean, most schools who talk about Vedanta and the idea of enlightenment, transcending our present condition, and so forth, are really schools for people who've given up everything and they're just going to go live in a cave or walk off into the Himalayas and so forth. Bhakti is very generous, so it doesn't require that we do that. But the fact that we're doing all of the things and so forth limits our capacity to take advantage of all that Bhakti is. But we shouldn't complain that the ideas come to us. We have it as a goal. It's now, we have a course to chart, and it's at times, at least when it's talked about, it's very attractive, right? So that's the grace of bhakti, right? Comes to us even if we're a householder, we've got a busy life, and so on and so forth. You're still a Vedantist. Other schools of Vedanta may wonder, but Pujapad Sridhar Maharaj gave a nice example once. Well, if you are the doorkeeper in a 100-story building, you open the door for every executive that comes in. That's your job. The building is 100 stories. Next building is 10 stories. In the 10-story building, the CEO is living on the 10th floor, penthouse, whatever, And every day he passes to the other building, and there he waves to the doorkeeper. Hello. And I take the elevator up to the 10th floor. I look out the window. There's that doorkeeper. He's a nice man, right? Who's in a better position? The person in the penthouse in the 10th story, or the person who's the doorkeeper in a 100-story? The doorkeeper is better because he could move up and become the CEO of a 100-story building. Then he looked down at that 10-story building. Did he come in the door today? Something like that. He gave an example. So we're connected with a very high thing, and sometimes it's hard to relate entirely to the very esoteric idea of the prayojan and attaining it, and so on. A relationship with Krishna, it's abstract, but it's if you have good association, you think it's a nice idea. I should stay in the ballpark of it, if you will. Because in due course, it will all the fruit of such will manifest, and I see it, examples of it in others. So don't be. One thing I should say is that and many devotees do this. They worship a deity. And this way they start to develop a personal relationship in a way that they can kind of put it together, like that's what you're asking about. They have a deity, they worship the deity, take care of the deity, develop a relationship with the deity, and the deity is Krishna. So there you go. This is very practical. That it's a very prominent part of our whole lineage, right? Archan, a major anga of bhakti. So just like I say, how do you're kind of asking, how do you love God anyway? How do you love him? I know how to love my daughter, my son, my husband, but how do I love God? We can talk about what is Sakya-ras, what is Madhurya-ras, the details, but if you don't have Adhikari, the books about that talks about that will be boring to you. You want to go read Ujjwal Nilmani, and there's this kind of, all these terms and examples, and it's a very complex book about Madhurya Rasa. So, in time, those books will make more sense and they'll be helpful and so forth. But in the meantime, for most devotees, it's not on the menu. It's not on the menu. It won't be appealing. So practically, though, if you love someone, like I said, then you want to serve them, right? If you love someone, and you might, like to cook something for them, buy them a gift, right? Wake them up in the morning so they don't miss anything. Give them a nice massage, right? That's what you do if you know, like, oh, my daughter's been away, now she's come back, she's been to college, she's come back, let me make her room nice for her, put her shoes there, and put her favorite picture on the wall, and whatever, right? This is what you do. So how to love, that's not such a hard question to answer, right? How to love Krishna, well, it's not hard either. You get a deity of Krishna and you do all these things for him. That's his love of Krishna. Very simple. So this what do you say, Murti avatar, this Archa Vigraha, this particular manifestation of divinity, this is a very gracious type of dispensation from the other side. It's not just playing with dolls, and and you do it right. We have so many examples of the deity showing that he's a real person. He can talk with you. Mostly he doesn't talk, because if he starts talking, then you have a problem. Do this, do that, then he knows. Prabhupada said, Krishna comes in the deity in a form that you can handle. Because you're not ready to just give up everything for him. You want the whole house for yourself, but you'll give him a closet. Give him a little closet, and every now and then you open it up. Then when you want to forget about him, you close it. But he's willing to come anyway. So he's very gracious, right? But gradually, then he begins to speak as you become more dedicated, and you develop real feelings and affection, and then consumes your whole life, right? So, does that help? Yes. Okay.
I've never done archan, but I suppose we could also go through chanting and the spiritual practice. if one doesn't have any deity or
Yeah.
no experience with it.
Krishna likes to hear songs about himself because he's wonderful. I mean, Krishna's amazed at his own self. He saw a reflection of himself in a jeweled mirror in Dwarka, and he was stunned. How? Well, I mean, so you think, well, it's kind of selfish to want to hear about yourself. You're kind of egotistical, but I mean, he's extraordinary. What can be said? He's wonderful. So you can recite the qualities of Krishna, the examples of those qualities, and sing his names and so forth. And it's very pleasing to Krishna. These are also ways of showing love. If you love someone, then whatever song you hear, then you turn it into what it means to you, right? In relation to that things that you're attached to. What else? Yes, Ram Govinda.
Yeah, I have a question relates to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his private doctor. When Jesus was walking on the earth, he was healing people and he could heal himself. Why Mahaprabhu needed a doctor? Why he couldn't heal himself? And second question, what kind of relationship they have together and what kind of treatment did he perform on Mahaprabhu? Yeah.
Which incidents are you talking about of Mahaprabhu needing a doctor? In Navadvip?
In Navadvip.
He had indigestion.
Yes.
I think who came to? Was it Murari Gupta?
Murari Gupta, yeah.
Was the Ayurvedic doctor, right? Yeah. Well, in the chapter that we're reading from, the first verse that was composed in Sanskrit by Krishnadas Kaviraj speaks about the event that we then visited of Mahaprabhu delivering the leper Vasudev, the Brahmin. So Mahaprabhu obviously had the powers to cure disease because he just embraced him and all his leprosy went away. His body became beautiful. There are a number of stories like this. So obviously Mahaprabhu had the power. So why didn't he cure his own digestion? That is the other thing. Because there are two sides to Mahaprabhu, where he's showing Aishwarya and he's showing that he's Bhagwan, right, for others. And then the other side is that he's not in the bhava of Bhagwan, he's in the bhava of a devotee, and it's rather than Aishwarya, it's Madhurya. Rather than majestic, it's sweet. And the sweetness is that just like Krishna, why does Krishna complain? Give me more. Govardhan says, Aniyor, feed me more. Does God need to eat? No. Do we need to feed him? Yes. Yeah, that's true. We need to feed him, but he doesn't need to eat. So in the Leela, then, he's not always showing this, especially in Navadvip, this Aishwarya. But he's showing the sweetness, and therefore he needs Murari Gupta to cure him of indigestion, and it was Ayurvedic treatment. And Murari Gupta was an Ayurvedic doctor. But it's the same in Krishna Lila, right? Mother in the Kumar Lila, Krishna requires Mother Yasoda to dress him. As soon as he reaches Poganda, he's thinking, I'll dress myself. Right? So, I mean, does God need anything? People argue, what does God need anything? Why build a temple for God? Well, why don't you feed the people? Now, it's true, God doesn't need a temple. We need a temple, though. God's everywhere. Why build a temple? He's everywhere, but you can't see him anywhere. So let's make a temple, and he's kindly come in the form of Archa Vigraha there, and then you go and serve there. You serve enough, right? And you go outside one day, you'll see him everywhere. Everything will remind you of him. We're living in God. We're living in the being of God. That's a fact. In the mind of God, the imagination of God. That's who we are. We are part of the dream of God. So don't, how seriously you want to take yourself that is separate from that. You're living in the dream, the imagination of God. It's beautiful, actually. All right, so it's nice to meet with you tonight, and we'll stop there. Sriman Mahaprabhu ki jai, Gauri Vaishnav Guru Parampara ki jai, Bhakti Vinod Parivar ki jai, Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai, Gaur Premananda.